to Yves straight away.
Okay.
Yves, over to you.
Thanks. And so I will share my screen again.
Right.
So I hope you are all seeing it. So what we're going to try to do in this session is to actually look, so we've looked in the first session at the key indicators of the labor market in theory. So what were the definitions behind? And what we're going to try to do now is to see, based on your LFS 2019-2020 questionnaire and the microdata that you have kindly shared with us so far, how we would advise to measure these key labor market indicators. So that's really the objective of this session. I have shared yesterday a Stata introduction PowerPoint as well. I'm not going to go through it here because it would be a bit too time consuming. But if you have some specific question about Stata, I'm happy to reply to them once you've looked at the PowerPoint if you're not very familiar, because I will use here the language of Stata in the way defining the indicators. So it might be slightly confusing if you've never worked with Stata. So don't hesitate to look at the other PowerPoint as well, in case you want to have more information specifically on Stata. So first, we will go back to the same indicators as presented in the previous session. So first are the persons in employment. And usually the way we derive this indicator, given that, if you remember, you have some priority rules between employment and outside the labor force. So you can only be in one of the three categories. What we do when we define this indicator is that we create a variable where everyone in the working age population, so 15 and above, will get a number, either if they are employed, unemployed, or outside the labor force, because you can't be in two categories at the same time. So to create just one variable allows you to ensure that everyone has one number, but nobody has two status at the same time. Like, you ensure that you don't have someone in employment and someone in unemployment at the same time in the microdata. So we can call it, usually we call it LFS for the labor force status. And here, what do we do? So that's where you need a bit to know the language of Stata. So I said that LFS, so this new variable, would be equal to 1, so for persons in employment. So first, the criteria that I'm taking is the age. So Q202, that's based on your LFS questionnaire. So to ensure that's the age. So to ensure, I want to ensure that everyone who will be classified in employment are only the persons who are in the working age population. So everyone who is 15 or any age older than this. So that's my first criteria for employment. And then the second set of criteria is to ensure that the persons have said yes to any of the employment filter question. And here, maybe I will go back to the questionnaire to explain why I selected all these questions. So 304, 305, 306, 307, and 309. I selected these ones because, so you have 304 in the last week. Did you work for pay for any business organization or person that does not belong to this household, even if only for 1 hour? So this is one of the usual questions we have to define employment. 305, in the last week, did you do any farm work or on land or land of others, such as cultivating, harvesting crops, land preparing, and so on? Again, this is one of the usual employment screening question. If you would apply the 19th ICLS, here we would usually check that this work is done to be sold on the labor market, but given that here it's still based on the 13th ICLS, there are no further checks that need to be done. 306, in the last week, did you do any non-agricultural work or on account or in a business that belongs to this household or one of the household member, even if only for 1 hour, example, trading, running a shop, driving a taxi, and so on. So again, one of the usual questions we have to define employment. 307, in the last week, did you produce any durable goods such as clothes, carpets, games for one used by household member? So again, because it's based on the 13th ICLS, this question here would be included. If it was on the 19th ICLS, this would probably be another form of work. 308 is actually checking that 304, 305, 306, and 07. If you have any answer yes, you go to 316. So in our micro data, in our derived variables, we could actually replace 304, 305, 306, and 307 just by 308. We usually go back to the root of the questions just to ensure that there is not issue in terms of skip patterns. So we prefer to take the direct initial variable rather than the filter one. So that's why I'm using 304, 305, 306, and 307 rather than 308. And the last one we need here to define employment is 309. Did you perhaps do any of this activity, even if just for 1 hour in the last week? So it's a sort of additional question to ensure that persons who did it just for a few hours are still counted. So again, we should include the persons answering yes here as employment, in employment. So that's the first group, and that's usually the largest group of persons that will be classified in employment. The second group, if you remember from the previous session, it's the persons who are temporarily absent, and they will also be considered in employment. So here, what do? We also put LFS is equal to 1. Again, if the persons are 15 and above, and if in 10, they've said that although you did not work last week, you have a work from which you are temporarily absent. So if they say yes to this question, then they will also be classified in employment. Yeah, the problem of running the PowerPoint in slideshow is that then I can't show the questionnaire at the same time because you don't see it properly. I'm not sure. Your Gendra? You don't see the PowerPoint properly?
It will. I thought it can be better seen in slideshow, and messages will pop up anyway in your screen, even in slideshow.
Okay, but can I then? Okay, but if I move to the questionnaire, yeah, it will take out. Oh, okay, well, I can go back each time. So that's why you have, so the second group are the persons temporarily absent. So that's based on question 310. If the persons are temporarily absent, we also include them in the group of persons who are in employment. I'm specifying here no need to use hours work as a criteria for employment. Why we don't need to use it? Because the questions already specify if the persons have been working for at least 1 hour in the reference week. So there is no further need to use the variable related to hours of work for the classification of persons in employment. We will use them, of course, when we want to look at number of hours worked per week, but for the filter to see who is in employment or not in employment, we don't need to use this criteria. So is it clear for everyone, the questions, the variables that we are using to define employment?
Yeah, it is clear. Just for the previous round, we consider 40 years and above, but no problem. We will discuss about that issues. Yeah.
Yes,
okay
so
now.
that is actually fine. If you have a national definition that is based on 14 and above, this is fine. Like we can adapt to that. The 15 and above is just, I would say, the international criteria, but each country, of course, is free to use as the minimum age the age that they want. So if this is the age used in Afghanistan, then Q202 should be above or equal to 14, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So then I guess I will move to unemployment. So to move to unemployment, the first thing that is important is to ensure that the person are not in employment. So if you look at the code at the bottom of the slide, you see I consider LFS equal 2 because LFS equal 1 were the persons who were in employment. So here I want the person in unemployment, so I will put LFS is equal to 2. And my first criteria to make sure that they are not in employment will be to check that the persons have not been classified into employment. So that's why I put if LFS, and that's why you have this an exclamation point and equal is not equal to 1. So I want to ensure that anyone going to be classified in unemployment is not in employment. And that's crucial because of the priority rule. If you are in employment, you cannot be classified into unemployment. So LFS should not be equal to 1 for as the first criteria. Then we are looking at the persons who are available, and the persons who are available, it's based on question 312. I'm skipping just to show. So the question 312, it is, were you available to start work in the last week if it had been offered? So that's really an availability question. So we used it as one of the 3 criteria. The persons have to answer yes, we are available in question 312. And then we want to ensure that we have only the persons who are actively looking for a job. And for this, we will use the question 313. Again, looking at the questionnaire 313, did you try to find work or start a job in the last 4 weeks? And actually here the reference period is good, it's 4 weeks. And the question clearly asks, were you actively looking? So normally you will have only the persons who say, yes, I'm available in 312. And yes, I'm actively looking in 313 that are considered as unemployed. There is one small category that we add that we mentioned in the previous session. It's also the future starters. And the future starters, you have them in your questionnaire because you have in the question 314. What is the main reason that you did not look for work in the past months? You have this answer 8, I've already found a job. So these are the future starters. So if they are available, these future starters will also be considered as unemployed. So that's why if we want to align with the International Conference of Labor Statisticians with the definition of unemployment, the code to be classified as unemployment has to be LFS is not equal to 1, you're not in employment, and Q312 is equal to 1, you're available, and either you're actively looking, so Q313 is equal to 1, or the bar like this means or in Stata, 314 is equal to 8. You have already found a job. And these are the only persons that will be classified as unemployed. So welcome back, Sapai. So these are the criteria that we use to be able to classify people who are unemployed. Is this clear for everyone?
Yes, it is clear. Just I have some questions. Some question they have a jump from another question for other question. Just my worries about that. If we coded like that, we didn't miss any person in the question.
So normally, no. We'll see after one of two maybe skip problems in your questionnaire, but for the unemployment, it seems that there were no problem, because if I go back to the questionnaire, you have really all the persons who are not in employment. So all the persons based on question 304 to 310 who have not been classified to employment, they are going to the question 312. So if they say no in 310, they were not temporarily absent. Everyone here is going to 312. So everyone who is not in employment is gonna answer the question on availability to start work, and then if they were actively looking with the question 313. So I think based on the skip pattern in your questionnaire here, this is fine, and you will have properly all the persons who should have answered, who answered this question 312, 313, and 314 for the one who are not actively looking.
Okay.
So this should be fine.
Yeah, it's clear.
And so the third category, again, because of the priority rules, is actually the easiest category to define. So it's persons who are outside the labor force, and it's everyone who is not in employment nor in unemployment, because everyone who is in the working age population has a labor force status. So you are either employed, unemployed, or outside the labor force. So if you're not employed and if you're not unemployed, so if LFS is not equal to 1 and LFS is not equal to 2, and you are in the working age population, so above 15 or 14 as per national definition, then you are automatically in LFS is equal to 3, because everyone has a status. So this third category is actually very easy to do. It is going to be everyone who is not employed nor unemployed. We don't need to do further check. It is de facto everyone who has not been classified in one of the first two categories. So this one usually does not create any problem because it's very easy to define. Now, if you remember, I talked as well about the potential labor force in the previous session. The idea of the potential labor force, it's among everyone who is not in the labor force, so everyone who is outside the labor force, some persons might have still some attachment to the labor market. And we saw that it was people who would have one of the two criteria between actively looking and available. So among the persons that were not classified as unemployed, so because they are outside the labor force, we will relax one of the two criteria alternatively to classify people in potential labor force. So first, we will look at the persons who are available. So Q312 is equal to 1, but who are not actively looking. So that's why I use Q313 is different from 1. So these persons were not in unemployment because they were not actively looking. But among the persons outside the labor force, we see that they are available. So they are going to be part of potential labor force. So that's why here it would be Q312 is equal to 1 and Q313 is different from 1. And the second category are the persons actively looking. So Q313 is now equal to 1 and not available. Q312 is different from 1. So as you see here for potential labor force, we use the same questions as for unemployment, but we relax alternatively one of the criteria. First, the availability, but without actively looking, and in the second case, persons actively looking, but not available. And this will give you the potential labor force. Usually, we call it PLF, so we create another variable because these persons are outside the labor force. So for the variable LFS, they've already been classified as 3. and we create a new variable that we call PLF, potential labor force, and there will be part of it if they respect one of the two criteria described here. Is that clear for everyone?
Yeah, it is clear that the diameter of this variable is the population out of the labor force. Yeah.
So the denominator to measure the potential labor force will actually be the extended labor force. So it's going to be the labor force, employment and unemployment, and the persons who are in the potential labor force. But everyone who is in the potential labor force, you're right, are persons who were classified as outside the labor force. So LFS is equal to 3.
Oh.
It's a subcategory, yes, of the persons outside the labor force. Indeed.
Yeah, thank you.
So I will, that's for the key variables. I will come back after on informality, and if we have time as well on time-related underemployment. If there is no further question, I just wanted to put a few comments now on the questionnaire because so we've worked with Peter and Tite on your questionnaire and on your sample microdata, and we had a few points that we wanted to highlight, especially given that the fieldwork is still taking place, if I understand correctly. So first, anyone working at least 1 hour per week, based on the question 304 to 309, has to be classified in employment, because all these questions are clear. They specify if you've been doing that for at least 1 hour per week. So anyone answering yes here should be classified into employment. Then we noticed a small issue in the question 311. I will go back to the questionnaire. Is that the skip, there is a skip to 323. And the problem of this is that you miss for the persons who are temporarily absent, you miss all the initial section on employment to have ISCO XA. So you see here, if the person are temporarily absent in question 310, once they have replied to the reason why they were temporarily absent in 311, they go to 323. And the small problem of this is that they are missing all the questions 319 to 322. I think the reason why is because you're asking in this question specifically what activities they were doing during last week, and they are temporarily absent, so they were not doing any activity. But the only problem with this is that we still want to know, even for the persons who are temporarily absent, where do they work? So what are the ISIC and ISCO classification? So I don't know if it's feasible to change, given that the fieldwork already started, but maybe for the future version of the questionnaire or future run of the survey, it would be good to ensure that the skip pattern for the temporary absent is sent to people who you are sent to 319 and not to 323 directly. Because we will not have, for the persons temporarily absent, we will not be able to classify them by ISCO and ISIC as they are not responding to this question. I wanted to highlight, unless you have any comments on this. No, okay. I wanted to highlight something I already mentioned in the previous session, is that employment and unemployment indicators are defined following International Conference of Labor Statistician. So they are approved by actually all the ILO member states. Therefore, there is only one definition of employment and unemployment. I'm saying this because I've seen you mention national, international definition. Normally, there is only one definition of employment and unemployment, which is, it's not even international, it's the definition that has been agreed by all ILO member states to define employment and unemployment. So we would encourage to have only one definition that follows ICLS. And if, for example, you want to relax some criteria for unemployment, to rather talk about potential labor force than talking about international definition for this. So based on the sample microdata that you shared with us, and of course here I'm putting the results unweighted because it's not the full sample, the fieldwork was not finished. This is what we were getting if we were processing the indicators. So among the sample that was shared with us, we have found that you have 1,220 persons that would be classified into employment, 221 into unemployment, and 2,576 into outside the labor force population. The labor force participation, so the labor force, it's the sum of employed and unemployed, so it's 1,441. And these were the rate. Of course, they don't mean anything because the fieldwork is not finished, and this is just a sample of the microdata, and these are unweighted. But this would have been the ratio that we would find here. So employment to population ratio, employment rate would be 30.4%, unemployment rate 15.3%, outside the labor force rate, or formerly known as inactivity rate, 64.1%. And the labor force participation rate would be at 35.9%. That's just to give you an idea, and you can see with your micro if you would get the same number, but that's what we were getting with the microdata that you've shared with us. A few other feedback on the questionnaire. So first one is, maybe it was on purpose, but in the microdata we've received, we didn't have in the labor file, so we didn't have anything related to the second job. So if we go a bit further, here you have all the variables for the main job that were in the microdata. We didn't have anything for the second job. I don't know if it's related to the fact that it's in yellow in the questionnaire, but it was not yet in the microdata. We had a bit of a misunderstanding of the variable Q319, which is based on ISIC classification. Let me just try to show you the problem. So if you can still all see, so this is data. When we were tabulating 319, it seems that your classification here starts, so it's for ISIC, it starts with 111. I don't know if you have a national classification of ISIC, but normally everything that is related to agriculture at 3 digits level would have numbers that are below 100. So here, unless you have a national classification or it's classified differently, but based on this classification, we would not have anyone in agriculture here, which would be a bit surprising to not have anyone covered. So I don't know on which classification 319 was prepared, but it didn't seem to be aligned with, I think, international classification, at least at this stage. And the last point is related to the weights. The weights that we found, of course, are not yet finalized, but I guess that's normal because the fieldwork is not yet completed, so it was not representing the entire population. So I don't know if you have any comments or any explanation for 319. What was the where is this classification coming from?
Thank you, Yves. And thanks for the feedback on the questionnaire. So we will we will check it with the points that you have raised with our field operation team. First of all, the point that you have raised, the skipping problem. It is an electronic form. First, we will
I'm sorry, I think we can't hear you properly, and I think we are a few having this problem.
Yes, we also cannot hear.
It's very blurry.
We will discuss, but I don't think if they can.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sapai sir, I think your connection is very weak. We cannot hearing you. I will answer this feedbacks and we'll discuss with Mr. Peter.
Okay.
Yeah. According to the question, second job, we have the previous survey. We tabulated the second job. Very few people they have the second jobs, about 0.3%, and all of that was the employer of the government employees. For this round, the actual DR2 survey we ran under the same time. To prevent the very busy and ambitious question, we didn't consider the second job for this round. Already we know that very few people they have the second job in the case of Afghanistan. In that case, we didn't consider that. For the second, the IC classification, we consider the ISIC version 4 3-digit. And the previous also we consider this the international IC code, not that is nationally any definition for us. But I don't know what is the problem for this quotation now. We will ask that. And the individual weight, now we calculated the weight because yeah, you're right, it is not the finish, but we consider the case of non-response. We adjusted the weighting. Now it's available weight. If you want, we will share with you for that.
But this is not the final sample, right? You're still in the field.
Yeah, we are still in the field, but we calculated for this. We consider the coefficient of the non-worker like that.
Okay, but there will be more individuals in the final microdata.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's fine. Yes, as Tite mentioned, I think it's indeed correct. If the second job it's too small, you don't have enough cases, not to include it. And yes, very grateful if you can check for ISIC, because if you follow either ISIC revision 3 or ISIC revision 4, you should still have, if it's the exact international classification, you should still have some persons with a code below 100, because otherwise it would mean that you have nobody in agriculture. So that would be a bit strange. So maybe there has been an adjustment that was done in the coding, maybe to check. So there were two more things. It's not part of the PowerPoint, but I'll share it again, that I wanted to highlight here. The first one is related to informal employment, because we talked about it this morning. So we've looked at your questionnaire. The variables that would be needed to define informal employment in the questionnaire right now are quite limited. You have a few. So first you have status in employment, Q316. That will be key. And the second one is income tax, Q337. If I go back to the questionnaire, so the first one would be Q316, which is basically your employment status, and that's crucial, because depending on your status, you will apply different criteria to define informality. And the other one that I found that could be useful to define informality is Q337. And this is, do you pay tax from your income? It's not, I would say, the best question to define informality, but it's the only one we found in your questionnaire that could be used, because normally for informality, what we use is for employees. So based on Q316, for the persons who are employees, we would check what are the social benefits. So if the employees are entitled to pension, or to paid leave, or to sick leave. But we did not find any question specifically for employees about their social benefits. So I don't think it's there. And for the self-employed, normally we would look whether their business is registered, or if they are keeping a set of accounts, or if they have a bookkeeping. Again, we looked quickly, so maybe we haven't seen, but it doesn't seem that there are any of these questions in your questionnaire. So I think the only variables we can use from what we've seen in your questionnaire would be the status in employment, so Q316, and the income tax, Q337. So that's for informal employment. And for, I would say, the better news, the good thing is for time-related underemployment. This one, I will add it to the slide as well. I did not have time to do it. But you have there the question in 321 and 322, are you willing to work more hours than presently working? Do you have time to work more hours in a week if offered? And given that you also have the number of hours worked, which is, I think, a bit further, but we've seen it. It's sorry, or maybe it's a bit before. Yes, here 317 and 318. How many days did you work in the last week? How many actual hours did you work on average last week? So with these questions, 317, 318, 321, and 322, you will be able to measure time-related underemployment. So that one should be fine. So these are good news, and you have also enough information to have employment, unemployment, potential labor force. So all the key indicators can be measured. The only one where it's a bit more tricky would be really informality, given that there is only the except employment status. There is only this question, do you pay tax from your income? That could be used as a proxy here. So I will add the time rating and unemployment to this PowerPoint, and I will share again with everyone a bit later today. Are there any questions or any comments?
Yeah, I see the data in question to 3.18. There is value 24 hours, 23 hours, 22 hours, like that. But 24 hours is the 150% said like that. It is average hour per days or per hours per weeks. But the question is for days, average hour per days.
So in 325, how many days do you estimate?
3.18.
18, sorry.
Yeah, there are 24 hours, 23 hours per day.
How many actual hours per day did you work on average last week? So normally it's really per day. So it's the number of hours here per day. I don't know if we tabulate Q318. Yeah, so you probably have a few persons, the 34 persons who replied 24, probably thought it was per week, but I think your vast majority of persons reply anything below 18, so they have properly understood the questions, because it's really the number of hours per day on average that you're working. So you would expect answers to range more or less from, I would say, 6 to 12 for most of the answers, which is the case here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Tite. So actually, maybe it's my mistake. I thought, oh yeah, because it's at 3 digits. So it's, sorry. So probably for ISIC, it's fine. You do range, because at 4 digits, it's from 111 to 322. So probably if we take the last 3 digits, okay, so probably ISIC is fine. So you can probably ignore my comment on ISIC. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so if maybe just to come in, so we need to confirm that they use 4 digits.
Yeah, because then it means, yeah,
that's where it means it will be a problem.
Yeah.
If they use 3 digits, then that could be a problem. But if they use 4 digits, then it's okay.
But I think they used 3 digits, because if I don't know if you can see my screen now, 319 seems to be only 3 digits answer, because the highest are 960, 999.
Yeah, it is 3 digits now. It's also 3 digits.
So then we need to know which 3 digit, 3 last digit, 3 first digit. That's if it is the first 3 digit, then it's a problem. Then it's still a problem. If it is the first 3 digit, then they should have something below 100.
Yeah,
should
exactly.
have 011 to 032, which is agriculture.
Yeah.
If it's 4 digit, then they have no problem.
Yeah, we will ask what they consider which the 3 digit, the first one or the last one. I don't know. It's not clear, but I think the previous was 3 digit, and also same like that. I will ask the person they are relevant for that section.
Yeah, exactly. So the advice is when you reduce the digit, you take the first ones.
I don't know. It's not. I'm
Many
not.
groups.
Yeah.
So that is something you need to check, because if you take the last 3 digit, then there is a big problem. I mean, we will have difficulties in classifying in the major groups. There will be a problem.
Yes.
So, yeah, because the major groups are in the first 2 digits. So if you have lost any of the first 2 digits, then we have a problem in the analysis, in the report. Okay, another comment may be on the questionnaire. So our advice usually is when you are developing the questionnaire, it's always good to alert us so that we can help us. I think my colleague Peter would be very happy to help you on in the future. So just the reason why is the example that Eve mentioned on the temporary absence, where you are skipping on 311, where you are skipping directly to 323, is that you can skip, but there are some categories you can't skip. So inside the question, there are some standard category which are actually almost agreed internationally, that this is normal that those people are temporarily absent. So you can't skip them, they are employed. So when you develop again this questionnaire, it's not that bad, it's good actually, because, you know, as long as you don't have a standalone LFS, this questionnaire is quite fine. So, but you need to alert us so that we help you to correct some of the minor issues that are leading to missing some categories. So like Eve mentioned, in a period like this, you would risk to miss a lot of people in employment with this questionnaire. In a period where you have crisis, and I'm sure you do have some of those in Afghanistan, you could miss many people in employment simply because you have missed those who are temporarily absent. So this is an issue we need to discuss next time when you have this type of survey where you are going to include a labor module. We need to discuss to make sure we are maximizing the collection that you are doing. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Kite.
And I have one question about the coverage of the survey. Is it covering the entire country, or there are some pockets which we are not covering?
Yeah, the coverage of the surveys, we consider the sample for each domain, each province per domain, and we got the sample for all the enumeration areas from each domain. But you know, some whereas in the case of insecurity, we cannot cover that.
Right.
Just we have also at the same time we consider the reserve sample. We selected that to prevent the bias issues. Then when we cannot cover these selected areas, enumeration areas, we can replace it by reserve. The reserve sample is less than 8% or 5%. It belongs to the situation of the domains. Some domains we didn't use any of the reserve, but some domains we use more than 10% or 10% like that. The situation of the insecurity. But the coverage is all of the country.
And when is field work ending?
Sorry, I don't understand.
The field work, when is it ending? When are you finishing the survey? You are still in the field, right? Are you still collecting? Are you still in the field? Are you still collecting the data?
Yeah. Now we are in the end of month and the 12th month of the data collection. We will finish it in the end of September or the October like that.
So end of September is the last month, rather.
Yeah, but normally maybe if we late it in the half of the October, maybe we finish.
Okay. 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 Thank you so much. I wonder if we don't have any other questions. I don't know whether my colleagues have any other questions they want to ask.
No, not on my side. It's well noted regarding the end of the fieldwork. Of course, if once the fieldwork is finished, if you want to share the finalized micro, and we're happy to work together with you, I would say on a finalized do file to get these indicators. I will send a revised PowerPoint today, and we're happy to stay in touch and work with you on processing these key indicators as well as a few others once the fieldwork is finished and the micro data are finalized.
Okay. And Tite, you?
Yeah, no, I'm fine on my side. And just to reiterate what you've just said, I think we are also happy to support them if they want to do a specific labor market report on this. So
Right.
we'll be happy to help them. You are there, Peter, and we have an employment specialist colleague in Delhi as well.
Right.
Who are familiar with this, so, and our colleague in Kabul. So we will be happy to support you in the report as well. If you want to have a separate report or even a chapter in your main report.
Thank you. And any other comments from our partners? Sepai, I mean, any comments you want as you are closing?
Yeah, for the future, we will discuss for our bosses and the management team of the CISO. We will discuss about the for the future and the final report. We will share with you, and we will.
Thank you very much. I wonder if you hear me now or
we can't hear you.
Or still it's a problem.
We couldn't hear. Seems the connection is bad.
Yeah.
And
for the future and the final report, we will discuss about the high management of the CISO,
right.
and we will share with the order for you. We have planned to have the separate for report for the laborers, and we will discuss and share with you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Tomorrow we'll be starting 30 minutes earlier, and we'll focus on the new resolutions, that is the 19th and the 20th ICLS. So we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. And you can start logging in 10 minutes before the time. And I hope we'll see you tomorrow. Unless you have any other thing to say, I think we can call it a day today.
Okay, bye.
Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you.